How's it going, everyone? Welcome to a Football for Fun video. I am Daniel. I am a Texans fan, and happy fantasy football season. This is the time of year when the fantasy drafts are starting to come up. People starting to do their research and things like that on fantasy football. So today, we are going to be unpacking my 10 favorite fantasy football wide receivers going into the upcoming NFL fantasy football year for 2025. Now, if you like this video and want more fantasy content, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and also give a like. You can comment, things like that. And who knows, we might even be having a fantasy league that you could join if you're subscribed. So feel free to drop a subscription. And with that out of the way, we are going to go ahead and go into my top 10 fantasy football wide receivers going into the season. Now, obviously, there are a lot of options. I think in the NFL, there's just a lot of receivers, good receivers generally. So it's really hard. And as you see, I even have a section for just outside the top 10. There are going to be a few like controversial. Well, one of them's not really controversial. One of them's just a name I like. I just couldn't put him in the top 10. But there are going to be names that are outside the top 10. You'll be like, oh, where's this player? There'll be players that I might have at 9 that you think they're closer to 2, something like that. But this is just like my personal preference. I haven't really done like deep research into like just like, like the rankings and like the deep analytics and things like that. I will say though, I am not the most qualified to talk about fantasy football, but I have won a few championships. So I think I am relatively, I think I'm relatively qualified to give some takes on fantasy football. That said, let's go into my outside the top 10. The kind of the darling that I really like, but is not. I don't think he's necessarily worthy of top 10. Is Jameson Williams. I think Jameson Williams could be really good. He basically did nothing his first 2 years, and then he kind of broke out in year 3 with like over 1,000 yards and I think 7 touchdowns. And given his speed, and he'll kind of be splitting time with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think there's a chance for him to break out, like go for like 1,200 yards and like, double-digit scores and things like that. But I don't think Jameson Williams is going to crack the top 10. But if he does, you heard it here first. Moving on, outside the top 10, I have Ladd McConkey. I think Ladd McConkey is really good. He had a really good rookie year, and I think a lot of people are projecting a lot out of him. I don't know. I'm just thinking that Harbaugh offense, he's gonna be like very run first and very run centric, and I think I could see Ladd taking a step back. Not that he's gonna have a bad year necessarily, but maybe his production will be a little bit less. They might just more like just like I think the game plan is gonna revolve around the running game more, so I could see Ladd taking a step back. I mean, the truth is that there were a lot of really good rookie receivers from last year, and that being Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas, and Ladd McConkey, for instance, and Marvin Harrison. Odds are one or if not more than them are going to take a step back. For my money, I'm predicting that to be Ladd McConkey. And last but not least, I have Drake London. Drake London just outside the top 10. I know a lot of people have him inside the top 10, maybe even like top 7 or something like that. I just don't quite see it. Maybe I just don't watch enough Atlanta Falcons football, but I don't really think Drake London is necessarily a top 10 receiver. I think he's fine. I think he's a very capable receiver, but I think with Atlanta, they're also going to be relying a lot on the run game, and they have a young quarterback, so I don't think he's necessarily going to be slinging the rock here and there. So I'm going to have Drake London outside the top 10. That said, let's go into my top 10 fantasy football wide receivers. At number 10, now keep in mind, this is a little bit of a wild card, but I do think there is going to be a rookie that will break out. I'm going to give it to TMAC. Oh, that was not awkward. But shout out to my co-host, Isaac. I think T-Mac is going to be, well, T-Mac is my 10th favorite fantasy football wide receiver. Quite frankly, I think a rookie is going to break out, and I don't necessarily think it's going to be Travis Hunter. Although, I do think Travis Hunter has potential to be really good in fantasy, so I wouldn't sleep on him either. But I think T-Mac, he obviously came out of Arizona State, or Arizona, I believe. Or no, it was Arizona State, right? He came out of Arizona State, was drafted, I believe, 10th overall by the Panthers, and has just shown a lot of flashes in Carolina in training camp, and it's going to be really exciting to see him play. I also think in Carolina, he is going to be the focal point on that offense. Obviously, Thielen is getting older, and I just don't know. Like, I know, like, Xavier Legette, I guess, is okay, but I think T-Mac is going to be the number one. He's going to be the focal point of that offense. So, with that said, at number 9, I have A.J. Brown. Now, A.J. Brown, I obviously know is a really good receiver. The thing about these top 10 lists is that these are all really good receivers. It's just that ordering them could be a little bit tricky. Like, I know a lot of you might be thinking, oh, why isn't he like number 3 or 5 or something like that? But I don't know. Like, I think he's had a very productive career, and this might just be one of the years where he's a little bit less productive. Maybe they rely more on Saquon. They try to, like, I mean, they have Devonta Smith to throw to. Also, I don't think his stats were all that impressive last year. I think he only had like 1,000 yards or something like that. So AJ Brown's my number 9 receiver, still in the top 10. But moving forward, at number 8, I have Brian Thomas Jr. Kind of like Lad McConkey, I think he could take like a step back after his spectacular rookie season. I think part of it could have to do with the fact that, they brought in Travis Hunter, and when he's on the field, there's a good chance that he will be the focal point. But I do think Brian Thomas Jr. is really good. Obviously, he had one of the better, if not the best, rookie campaigns among wide receivers, rookie wide receivers, that is. But I just think, like, I don't know, you have Trevor Lawrence throwing you the ball. Can you necessarily count on that consistency? I mean, I will be the first to say, though, that you shouldn't necessarily sway from a receiver because there's a very good second receiver, or the quarterback's not productive. I think a lot of us maybe learned from last year when Justin Jefferson wasn't going that high because Sam Darnold was going to be throwing him the ball, and it's like, ugh, really? But obviously he was very good. And so I've definitely learned that, like, you can't necessarily just be like, oh, just because someone's throwing to him. But that could be a factor nonetheless. I have Brian Thomas as my number 8 receiver. At number 7, I have CeeDee Lamb. Now, I think CeeDee Lamb's a little bit slept on, really, as like a top 10, if not top 5 receiver. I think he just kind of doesn't really benefit from playing on the Cowboys. And so there could be like a lot of kind of bias there. Honestly, the only reason I would have him higher is because there are a lot of guys that I like ahead of CeeDee Lamb. I think he's really good. Again, George Pickens coming to town, I don't really think that impacts him, but Dak's getting a little older. I would say that I would like his chances to produce, CeeDee Lamb's that is, if Dak Prescott can stay consistently healthy, but it'll remain to be seen. I just think CeeDee Lamb's going to fall off slightly, but not really. I mean, he's number 7, so that's really very good. At number 6, this is my fantasy receiver darling, being Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, if you watched my video on players that will carry you to your championship, I talked about him a little bit, but I think Marvin Harrison Jr. had a little bit of an underwhelming rookie year compared to his contemporaries like the Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas and Lad McConkey, things like that. But I do think Marvin Harrison is on track to just like dominate for years to come. Again, I'm not trying to overreact to the training camp film, but he's looking really good in training camp. He's much more jacked. And, I think it helps that he has the genetics from his dad. And I think he's going to be consistently very, very good. So yeah, I mean, you have Kyler Murray throwing you the ball, which, I mean, you can argue, like, is Kyler Murray a top 12 to 15 quarterback, but he is a pretty consistent, stable veteran for the most part. So I have Marvin Harrison at number 6. At number 5, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, in that explosive Lions offense, he's going to get a lot of touches. Injury pending, he's going to be really good. Yeah, honestly, not much more necessarily needs to be said. Maybe the only question you might have is if Jamison Williams kind of takes away like targets and catches from him. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think he had like the 3rd best fantasy sort of production out of the receivers last year. So he's clearly very good and on the rise. He's still a very young receiver, so I have all the reason in the world to believe in Amon-Ra St. Brown moving forward. At number 4, I have my guy, that is Nico Collins. Obviously, a lot of you know that I am a Texans fan and try to remain unbiased. That said, if you've seen Nico Collins play, he can really not only just catch the ball, he can like moss guys, he can like run after the catch and things like that. He's very fast. He kind of runs like a gazelle. And the other reasoning for this is that I believe that Nico Collins is going to be the focal point of that Houston Texans offense. If you really think about it, like, obviously there's the run game, but as far as receivers go, his threats are like Christian Kirk and a bunch of rookies. So there's no reason to not believe, again, health pending, that CJ Stroud is going to focus in on Nico Collins. Someone he's very familiar with, very comfortable with, and obviously Nico can make the contested catches, he can run, he can sprint, things like that. So I think Nico Collins is due for a breakout. I think he's going to have a career year. I think he's going to be one of the best receivers in the league, at least for 2025. And by this time next year, we might be thinking of Nico Collins as one of the best receivers in the entire game. So I have Nico Collins for my money at number 4. At number 3, I have Malik Nabers. I think Malik Nabers had a really, really good rookie year, and I think he's just going to be able to follow it up. So if you think about this, Malik Nabers is only 22, so he's very young. At age 21, keep in mind, with chumps throwing the football in at quarterbacks, like Daniel Jones and Tommy DeVito, the dude had 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. I mean, I think, like, if anything, like, the way I talk about, like, Marvin Harrison and things like that, this guy is a rocket ship. And kind of like what I said with Marvin Harrison, actually, I think he'll have a more stable presence throwing you the football, which, again, I know, like, Russell Wilson, he's not really what he once was anymore, but I do think at number 3, Malik Nabers is very fair, and I think, honestly, like, kind of my rule of thumb is that you can never go wrong with an LSU receiver. So Malik Nabers at number 3. At number 2, and this is obviously between the two other LSU receivers, between Jamar Chase, I almost said Jamar Jefferson, and Justin Jefferson. So Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I'm going to have Jamar Chase at 2. I think a lot of people will have him at 1, but honestly, like, he just had a career year. He had a very historic year, you could argue, and I just think he might take a step back. And a step back just meaning from, like, number 1 in production to number 2, right? Obviously, he's very good in his own right. He's an example of someone I don't fear drafting because, oh, he has T. Higgins on the other side. Well, who cares if he has T. Higgins on the other side if he's going to dominate? So, but I do think the thing with Jamar Chase is that I think he'll take a step back just as far as that production goes. Like, I mean, what were his stats last year? I mean, he was really good. Was he, I want to say he was 1,700 yards. Like, yeah, he might go from like 1,700 yards to 1,500 yards. It honestly wouldn't shock me. Yeah, 1,700 yards, 17 touchdowns. So it wouldn't shock me if he's at like 1,500 yards and like 13 touchdowns. But Jamar Chase is so freaking good. And at number 1, I'm going to have Justin Jefferson. Honestly, no real rhyme or reason to putting Jefferson necessarily at 1 over Chase at 2. I will say, though, Jordan Addison is missing the first 3 games. So that'll kind of give him opportunities to really shine in weeks 1 to 3. Not that Justin Jefferson needs opportunities to shine, but there is a question mark potentially with J.J. McCarthy throwing him the football. But again, we all learned from last year, just because you have an unknown throwing you the football doesn't mean you're not going to produce. This time last year, we were like, Sam Darnold is going to be throwing him the football. He still dominated. He was still really, really good. So I wouldn't take anything away from Justin Jefferson because of that. And with that said, there are your top 10 fantasy wide receivers, according to me. Let me know what you think in the comments. Did you think it was a great list? Did you think it was trash? Feel free to write in the comments and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for watching, and be on the lookout for running backs and maybe quarterback rankings. So stay tuned.